Good evening. It's a pleasure to have everyone here tonight in the midst of this snow or slush. We're learning over here in the 10th chapter about the Sadiq personality. So he is someone who is in total control of himself, and he's totally filled with the love of Hashem. And nevertheless, in TANYA over here, he says there are two types. There is a complete and an incomplete. And we're now in the middle of the one who's incomplete, as opposed to the one who's complete. The one who's complete is someone who totally sublimated himself. He has no evil whatsoever. He has no desire for evil, and he totally despises evil. He changed himself so thoroughly that he is totally a holy person. As opposed to the incomplete Tzadik, which he is incomplete in a specific sense that he doesn't despise evil. And now we're going to do a very interesting psychological analysis of this. And although we are speaking about the Tzadik, nevertheless, number one, it's very interesting how we analyze the complicated status of the incomplete Tzadik. Generally in life, there's black and white. So there's the Tzadik, the totally righteous person, and the Rasha, the totally evil person. When it comes to an incomplete, so the question is, how is he incomplete? To what degree is incomplete? There are different levels of incompleteness. Complete is complete. So complete evil and complete good is clear. It's when you have incomplete, it gets very interesting. And how do you define this incompleteness? So it's number one, an interesting study. Second of all, as I've said before, the way the TANYA looks at some of the points of his incompleteness of the Tzadik is also a lesson that could apply to all of us who are very far from a Tzadik. The way we analyze the incompleteness or maybe failing of this Tzadik is something that we can apply to our lives. So specifically he said, the complete Tzadik is complete because there's no fraction of evil in him. And therefore, he despises evil. As opposed to the incomplete Tzadik, even though he's in total control of himself, and he has no desire for evil, it doesn't even enter his mind selfish thoughts. He's a total idealist. So what is he full of? Both the incomplete Tzadik and the complete Tzadik, they are full of doing the right thing, doing good, holiness. They are on fire with Hashem. But the incomplete Tzadik, he doesn't despise evil. He doesn't feel so upset or angry even when he sees evil around him or in him. And the fact that he doesn't despise evil, that reflects that he has something in him that is associated with evil or selfishness. Because somebody who's totally unselfish, he despises selfishness. Now I want to point out that this doesn't mean he despises a selfish person. When we're talking about over here, someone who despises evil, we're not talking about a person. When I talk about a person, people are human beings, and we have to judge them positively and with hope, and not despise them when we speak about despising evil. Perhaps a person is a total personification of evil, a real wicked and evil person, he becomes one with the evil. But when we're talking about despising evil, is not a madman who hates. People who hate people, that's a different discussion. That's a different problem. And even if you see people who are doing evil, really we should love everybody. And we should find a way how to educate them to make them a better person. But that's not the discussion here today. Here the discussion is evil as an object, not as a person. As an objective negative ideal or idea or character trait. So the incomplete Tzadik, he has this fault in him. What is his fault? It's not something we can identify. It's the fact that he doesn't despise evil. So now we're going to analyze that. The Tzadik Gomer, the complete Tzadik, anything that's from the other side, anything that is a distraction from holiness, that certainly against holiness, even if it's a distraction of holiness, even if it's a distraction from doing what's right, it takes away from doing what's right. The complete Tzadik hates that, betachlis hasina, he despises it completely. Machmas goydel ahavosai laHashem ukudashasai. Now, what's the motivation? It's because his total love for Hashem and the holiness of Hashem. Here's a very important point when it comes to confronting evil. Why does somebody despise evil? Why is someone disgusted with evil? And we're saying that this is very important, because if you're not disgusted with evil, that means you have a little bit of evil in you, that you make peace with it. It shows that there's something in you it's something wrong with you. That means that you relate to it because it's somewhere in a subtle way in you. So what is the point? The point is you should despise evil. And the question in front of us is this an end in itself? Or is this a byproduct of being a positive person? Why are you against negativity? Because you hate negativity? Or because you're so positive, therefore anything that's opposite of positive, that's why you don't like negativity? And that's what he's saying, a very important point here that the Alter Rebbe is making in the Tanya. He's saying when we're talking about the complete Tzadik, and he reached the degree that he despises evil, this is a reflection of his intense love for Hashem. He's not someone who is standing in the streets and saying, this is bad and that's bad. I'm pointing out about all of the bad. There used to be, in earlier times, Musar Zagers. They used to come to a town and give a speech to the congregation, and all of their faults. Number one, they're not supporting the poor. Number two, they're all selfish. Number three, they have an ego. Number five, this and that. Telling people their faults. And also, that's the way they worked on themselves. This is the Musar movement. So they would see, what's my problem? My problem is I'm too selfish. I have an ego. I have jealousy. I have this. I have that. They're looking at their own evil. The Alter Rebbe says over here, it really is about love. It's all about love. Why is the complete Tzadik so against negativity? It's because of his love for Hashem. And because he's so full of love, So therefore he sees anything that is against Hashem, or Kedushasa, he says a powerful word, Hashem and His holiness, that's why he despises it. It's not that he is a firebrand that's standing in a box and saying how bad people are who do evil, or even how bad evil is as an idea. It's about his love for Hashem. So what is he busy with? What is his whole totality is he loves Hashem. And because he's so passionate about Hashem, therefore when he sees evil in front of him, so therefore he gets so upset and he's against it and he despises evil. I want to ask a question. Someone marries a woman who has children. Okay, it's her second marriage. Why does he marry this woman? Because he loves her. And now she has children. Does he love the children? Does he love her children? Can he say, I love her? Does he say he loves her completely, but he doesn't love her children? Would that be true love or not? But he says he loves her, do anything for her. We see something interesting over here. Someone who loves Hashem loves what Hashem loves, and he despises things that are against Hashem. If a man marries a woman and he says, I love you, but I don't like your children, then he doesn't completely love her. Because there are parts of her that he doesn't like. So there's a part of her heart where her heart loves the children and he's not over there. They once asked the Alter Rebbe, the one who wrote the Tanya, what is greater? The love of Hashem or the love of Israel? Both are mitzvahs. It says in the Torah you should love Hashem. We say it in the Shema every night and every morning. It's also one of the 613 mitzvahs that you have to love Israel. You have to love every Yid, you have to love him. So they're both mitzvahs. And they're both mitzvahs about love. So they asked the Alter Rebbe, which is a greater mitzvah? To love Hashem or to love Israel? Now in parentheses, the way the Alter Rebbe in Tanya describes the complete Tzadik, about how he is so on fire about the love of Hashem, love of Hashem, love of Hashem, and like we're learning over here, that it's all about his love of Hashem, that his whole pleasure and his whole delight and everything in his life is all about Hashem. So it's an interesting question that they asked the same Alter Rebbe, what is greater, the mitzvah of loving Hashem or loving Israel? So he answered, Hashem loves Israel. He brought a verse, Hashem loves Israel. He said, the love of Israel is greater than the love of Hashem. Why? He says, because Hashem loves Israel. He chose us and He loves us. So Hashem loves Israel. So if you love Hashem, you have to love what Hashem loves. If someone is beloved to you, you should love what is beloved to him or her. So what does it mean, love? That means Hashem cares more than anything about Israel. That's the love. Hashem has a love. What's His love? Hashem's love is He loves Israel. So then if you love Hashem, you should love Israel. Hashem is saying to a Yid who says, I want to love Hashem. So Hashem says to him, I'm busy now. I'm loving Israel. So listen to Hashem. Hashem says He's busy now loving Israel. So be involved in what Hashem loves. So bringing it back into everyday life, someone says to the woman, he says, I love you, but I don't like your children. That shows that he really doesn't love her. Maybe he does, but certainly it's not a complete love. Because there's something about her that he is not in that space in her heart. I'm not being judgmental, things get complicated, especially in the second marriage. And some people do what they do, and not always the people have choices to make everything perfect. But when we're analyzing it, we have to understand the depth of it. Here, we're analyzing this. And coming back to the theme that's at hand, we're saying that why does the complete Tzadik despise evil? It's not because despising evil or coming out against evil or looking at evil negatively, and this is an end in itself. It is because his love for Hashem that he has that. One is opposite the other. King David said on himself in his poems which he wrote to Hashem, the poetry or the chapter Tehillim, it's not just poetry. It was his prayers. He composed prayers which are now part of the Psalms, part of the Tehillim. And he writes in that, which reflected his feelings, Tachlis sinas anesim, I hate evil. I hate evil. And he said, Hashem, analyze my heart. Dalavavi, know my heart. If he wants to say to Hashem that he hates evil, that's one thing. Why does he follow up with saying, and know my heart? So from here the Alter Rebbe is telling us that that's because the hating evil is not an end in itself. It says Hashem, look at my heart. My heart is full of love for you, and because of the love that he has for Hashem, that's why he despises evil. We said before that it is one opposite the other. It's one's against the other. Good and evil do not go together. One could say, I love chicken and I love fish. I love science and I love art. I love red and I love blue. I'm not getting into politics now, but the color. They're not opposite each other. You can love different things. But to love good and to love evil, they're opposite. That's what he says, Zeh le'uma zeh. One is opposite the other. You can't say, I love good and I love evil. The Tzadik, who is both the complete Tzadik and the incomplete Tzadik love Hashem. The incomplete Tzadik, he loves Hashem, but he could stand evil. He's not so revolted by evil that he sees. Or even on a higher level, he's not so revolted by the pursuit of distractions, of physicality, of worldly pleasures that take away, that are a distraction from ideas and ideals of Hashem. So if the fact, even though he has love Hashem, but the fact he also can handle evil, that means he doesn't hate evil. So therefore the Tzadik Gomer, when King David said, Dal Lavavi, Hashem, look at my heart. Look that I love you. And that's why he hates evil, because David HaMelech was a complete Tzadik. And then he adds, Ukafi erach goydel ha'ava. That this, if you really want to analyze it, that's what really we're taking apart the incomplete Tzadik. And he says that proportion to how much he loves Hashem, proportionate to that would be how much he despises evil. If he loves Hashem more he despises evil. He loves Hashem less, the less he despises evil. If we would use the example of he marries a woman with children, the more he loves her, the more he loves the children. The less he loves her, the less he loves the children. Even though, if you would ask him, he says, well, listen, I married you for you, I didn't marry you for the children. So here we're talking about the tzaddik, incomplete tzaddik, it's not so much about the love and what Hashem loves, but it's all what Hashem hates, what Hashem despises. So Hashem gave us a list of evil which Hashem despises. Do you despise what Hashem despises? So if you love Hashem, you should love what Hashem loves, and you should despise what Hashem despises. And if you love Hashem, but you don't despise evil, things that are against Hashem, then that's a sign that your love is not so complete. To despise and be disgusted even on evil is the opposite of love. So the more love of Hashem, the more you should be disgusted with evil. And the incomplete tzaddik, he doesn't hate evil. He loves worldly distractions. A complete tzaddik is not distracted at all by worldliness, by worldly pleasures. He's a holy man. And the fact that he's still, and if he doesn't despise anything that is a distraction of connecting to Hashem, that shows that he's still attached to these distractions. Maybe not openly, but certainly subconsciously. He'll say, yes, I love Hashem. He davens all day. He never enters his mind to do anything that's going to distract him from Hashem. But if you don't despise these things that take away, then that shows that you're not completely sublimated. You're not a complete tzaddik who totally changes character. It's not. He lacks. It's an incomplete sublimation of his own selfishness, even a natural selfishness. So again, that's why the level of a tzaddik is not for all of us. And it's a tzaddik. The level of a tzaddik we're talking about, a complete tzaddik, is something that's like what a rebbe is. But analyzing the incomplete tzaddik, who's also something that's not in our category at all. But there are certain lessons that we can apply, and this is when we see evil at our level, the fact that if we see evil around us and it doesn't disgust us, that means there's something in us that is not so So therefore, even it shows there's something there. So the fact that he still has something in him, even though it doesn't push him like the Beinoni. We spoke about the Beinoni personality. His evil pushes him to consider doing something evil. But he pushes it back. The tzaddik even though he has some fraction in him, it doesn't push him to do evil, but he's not revolted by it, which is an interesting phenomenon. Many people say, I'm a good person. Why am I a good person? Because I never even considered doing something. I don't do anything bad. Not only don't I do anything bad, I never have the desire to do bad. I have no desire for jealousy. I have no desire for unkosher lust. I have no desire. I have no negative. I have no bad energy in me. So I'm a good person, which is true. Halavai, people wouldn't have any bad energy pushing them to do something that's bad. What Tanya is saying over here is, even if you don't have any bad energy that's pushing you to do evil, if in you feel and look at evil outside of you, you can handle it and you're not disgusted by it, that means that you still have some connection to it. You know, they say alcoholics who are going through therapies, and someone told me he hasn't touched alcohol in 20 years. But he doesn't want to say on Kiddush a drink. Why? Because I'm still attached to alcohol. So you could be somebody who is not motivated and pushed. He has no inside of him a drive to do evil or even selfishness. He has no drive for selfishness in him. He's an idealist. But when he sees selfishness around him, he doesn't feel how disgusting it is. And again, I'm not talking about judging a person who's selfish. Judging a person, you have to differentiate between the fault, the objective fault, and the person who has the fault. You have to be accepting to every person. And that is a subtle difference. We have to ask ourselves, if we are not revolted by evil around us, that's a sign that there's something wrong within us. That there's a shemetz mineu, some fraction that's in us. And the main point, again, he comes to the idea of the love. That's a reflection that his love to Hashem is not complete. And again, here you see how the Alter Rebbe says that the real ideal is being a person who's positive and to have love for good and a passion for good. And if he could handle and stand evil around him, or even in him, then it means his love is not complete. Because if there's love, a complete love for Hashem, like the complete Tzadik, who completely sublimated and cleaned himself for any fraction of iota of evil that he may be in him, he would already be repelled and disgusted by it. And now he says, in the level of the incomplete Tzadik, so as we said, there are few. In each generation there are few. So he says, he's going to bring a Gemara, it says, there are 18,000 Tsadikim standing before Hashem. But then he speaks about Tzadikim that are very few, just a handful in a generation. The incomplete Tzadik, you can have a thousand. So there's 15 million Jews. You can have a few thousand incomplete Tzadik. A complete Tzadik, you're going to have just a handful or maybe even just one in each generation. Now, why are there different types of incomplete Tzadik? So he's analyzing. It depends how much of a fraction of evil they still have in them. And also could be in different types of personality faults. We spoke about the 4 fundamental elements of evil. So, for example, depression. And we're not talking about clinical depression, but someone who's always sad. He says sad sack. It's not that he needs pills, which is another discussion, which he has to go to a doctor. But a Jew is supposed to be in a state of joy. And if he's a sad sack, it's not a good, it's something that comes from the other side. It doesn't come from the other side. And the neshama of a Yid has joy, a natural joy. And if he's sad, it's the other side pulling him out. Laziness, jealousy, ego, boasting, just into his pleasures, lust. All these are faults. Now they're different faults. Jealousy and lust is 2 different things. Laziness and ego is 2 different things. Person who has an ego is the opposite of lazy. Person who's lazy is lazy. It's different type of faults. And when we talk about the different levels of the incomplete Tzadik, it could be reflecting what kind of fault he has. In other words, he can be a complete Tzadik and he hates ego, and he hates depression, and he hates all these negative things, and he cleansed himself from all of that. He has no lust. He has no ego. He has no depression. He cleansed himself of all that negativity. But he looks at laziness. He's not lazy because he worked on himself that he shouldn't be lazy. But he doesn't despise laziness. So even though laziness is a distraction, because if he's lazy, he's not going to accomplish. Just like all of us, if we're lazy, we're going to accomplish less. And a tzaddik, he wants to be close to Hashem. So laziness is a distraction from him doing more mitzvahs. So he can do mitzvahs of studying Torah, and then he can go around helping people. Rabbi Kiva Eger, he was one of the great sages, lived about 300 years ago. And in yeshivas and in the rabbinic seminaries, we study his works today. In my library, I have several of his works, very deep, very insightful, brilliant genius, Torah genius. And I read about his biography. Every morning after davening, he would visit the Jewish hospital. He lived in Pozna. It was a city. And I don't know what kind of hospital they actually had. But there was a place where all the Jewish sick were, and he would go visit them. So he was a rabbi of a big community. People wrote, he was a rabbi's rabbi, so rabbis who was stumped by a difficult halachic question would write to him and he would have to respond to them. So laziness doesn't allow a tzaddik to learn. And laziness will hold him back from going visiting the sick. Laziness will hold him back from complimenting people who need a little boost, or consoling those who have a broken heart. So he's not lazy. But laziness, he doesn't see how terrible laziness is. That means he has something of laziness in him. Practically not. But that shows that his love for Hashem is incomplete because lazy, and he doesn't see how he doesn't feel at laziness. Now, what's the terrible thing about laziness? So for us, it's not so terrible. And especially if I'm not lazy, I just can handle the laziness of others. But for the lesson we can learn about evil around us, there's a lot of evil, real bad stuff coming in the world around us. And like we spoke the other week about the banality of evil. The Germans had terrible things happening around them in their country by their leadership. And it was regular. It was just regular. It was the norm. And they were not angry about the evil. They were not revolted by the evil that was going on around them. That's why when the American troops, when they liberated the concentration camps, and they saw the horrors of the concentration camps just in front of them, the death and the suffering. So they went to the German cities around the concentration camps and forced the German citizens to see what their government that they supported, what horrors were done by the German people. So they knew more or less what's going on. But they weren't revolted by it to the degree to rebel against the evil empire that was created by Germany, who at the beginning of the 1900s was considered the brightest and the best of Western civilization. So what we can learn from this is, in our struggles and our view of the world. So therefore, it depends on the different. Even though we're saying there may be even thousands of these incomplete tzaddikim, who are also rare. We're talking about millions of Jews. It depends on what kind of fault each one has, and to what degree they have it. What is the degree of that fraction of evil in them? Is it 1,000, 1 in 1,000? Is it 1 in 60? It says in the Gemara that there's 18,000 Tzadikim before Hashem. Doesn't really mean it's in one generation, but it means that in each generation they are more numerous to say 18,000. But the real tzaddikim, the complete tzaddik, they are rare. And now he's going to explain what does it mean a complete tzaddik. Achal mailas tzaddik gomor hu shama Rashbi ra'isi Bonet Aliyah v'hemo atinchol. Rashbi is Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, the author of the Zohar, one of the fathers of Kabbalah, because we also call our teachers of Torah Avos. Pirkei Avos, the chapters of our fathers, who are the Avos, are the sages. They are our teachers. So they are called like our fathers, our patriarchs in Torah. So Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, who was the father of the Kabbalah, so he said, he said, there are righteous people who are so rare, they are called Bonet Aliyah. And this is the term he uses, Bonet Aliyah. Aliyah means higher. When someone's called to the Torah, you say he's getting an Aliyah. Why? Because he's going up the steps to the platform from where they read the Torah. Because in most shuls, and also in Talmudic times, they read the Torah on a platform so everyone who in the congregation can hear the reader, because he's reading the Torah for the congregation to hear. So you said, get an Aliyah, go up. A Bonet Aliyah are people who are higher. He's a higher person. He's not just a regular guy. He's a higher type of personality. And we call Hashem a higher being. Someone who's what kind of being is Hashem? He's a higher being. What is he higher than? He's a higher being. He's not human. He's not limited, and so on. In the helm of Jewish people, who are striving to become higher, a Ben Aliyah is someone who's of a higher category. That means he's of a different dimension. He's totally changed his persona to the degree that there's nothing left in him except being an instrument through which Hashem's message is brought to the world. These were the Rebbes. These were the complete Tsadikim. They didn't live their life for themselves. Every minute, every second, every iota of their personality was the love for Hashem. And therefore they despised evil. So he called them Bonet Aliyah. And they are few. There's one in a generation, maybe two in a generation. Why are they called higher? There's words. Rabbi Shimon called these complete Tsadikim higher people, a Ben Aliyah. He's a higher person. Why higher? Higher, or another translation would be elevated. He elevated himself to a totally higher level. So he's not in the same dimension or category of other people. There are regular people, then there's people who are higher people. They're higher people. They describe one of the Polish Tsadikim. So he was a young man. His father was a Tzadik and a leader of a lot of Polish Hasidic Jews in the thousands. And when his father passed away, he was a relatively young man, and he was also very bright and very special and so. And he had a friend who was a friend before, and his friend tells him, I see you're a totally different level than me. Why is it? We're the same age, and you're at a totally different level than me. I noticed that before you became Rebbe, but now you became Rebbe, I see it even more. Why is it? So the rabbi said to him, it's like somebody wants to reach the peak of a mountain. So how do you reach the peak of a mountain? You have to climb a mountain. Is it easy to climb a mountain? No. It's very challenging. A lot of people go halfway up the mountain and then they give up. And it takes a lot of effort and toil and perseverance to really reach the peak. And there are very few who actually reach the peak of the mountain. It's very hard. It's a big challenge. So there's one man who decides, I'm going to climb to the peak of the mountain. And after days and effort and sweating, and he uses all of his energy, he finally makes it to the top of the mountain. And when he reaches the top of the mountain, he collapses because he has no more strength. But he's thrilled that he reached the peak after all this effort and training, etc., etc. And when he falls to the ground to rest, he sees there's a kid that's on top of the mountain, whistling to himself, singing, and skipping like a kid skips, And he says, that kid, how did he get up here? Look at him. It took me days at work, and I was training for this for so long. And this kid, so he calls over the kid and says, tell me, how'd you get up here? Look at me. So the child says, you had to climb up the mountain. I was born on top of the mountain. So the rabbi was telling his colleague, his friend, you see, my father was a Tzadik and I'm a Tzadik. I was born on top of the mountain. For you it's a challenge. For me, it's not such a challenge. So it's not that my accomplishment. This was handed to me. But there are people who are on top of the mountain. That's what Bonet Aliyah. They reached a higher level. They elevated themselves. How they elevated themselves? but they are flesh and blood, and they have hot blood flowing in their veins like everybody. And the natural inclination of a person of flesh and blood is to feel his flesh and his senses. So how does this tzaddik consider himself a higher person, an elevated person? And most tzaddikim weren't necessarily born on top of the mountain, so to say. So he says they're called Bonet Aliyah because they elevated themselves. They took their body and their blood and their senses and they brought it higher. And that's why they became higher. And that's why they're called Bonet Aliyah. Nikran Bonet Aliyah shemahap mara amayon leisen l'kedusha k'deisa b'zayar b'hakdama. Like it says in the introduction to the Zayar. It says, we mentioned before, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, he was the father of the Kabbalah. His classic work is the Zayar. The Zayar is a compilation of the teachings that came out of his yeshiva. So it's not only his message, but all of the students and disciples and the rabbis around him who were studying with him the Kabbalah. So that's in the introduction to the Zayar, what says the Kabbalah, he describes what is the quality of a complete tzaddik. And what does he describe? What is the quality of a complete tzaddik? So there's a story there. There was a sage, a Talmudic sage, his name was Rabbi Chia. There were many sages at that time, but not all of them were on such a level to be in where Rabbi Shimon was. So when Rabbi Chia wanted to go up to the Heichel, to the heavenly chamber of Rabbi Shimon, Shama Kala Nafik. So Rabbi Chia heard a heavenly voice say, so the Zohar says, who can come to the chamber of Rabbi Shimon? This was the heavenly chamber where the soul of Rabbi Shimon was. Who can come into that chamber to be in the company of Rabbi Shimon, who was the Rebbe of all Rebbes? Only someone. So Rabbi Chia hears this heavenly voice say, if you are someone that converted darkness to light and bitter to sweet, you hear? Did you change darkness to light and what is bitter to sweet? If you did that, that's considered elevated. If you elevated darkness to light, if you elevated something that's bitter to become something that's sweet, that is an elevated person. That is a higher person. Then you could be in the company of Rabbi Shimon. So what is he saying in Tanya over here? How do we qualify and define the complete tzaddik? Who had a complete change in his whole persona, that the darkness that was in him. So with all the negative qualities, which are naturally and maybe instincts in him, and all of the bitterness that may have been in him, he made that sweet, a total turnaround. So then, that is called a Ben Aliyah, and that is a complete tzaddik. So as we said many times, we're learning this chapter about the tzaddik, even though this level and category of being, so to say, a higher person or an elevated person, we're not in that dimension at all. But I think there's much that we can learn from this and apply it to ourselves and our level. And specifically in this capability, at least in our level, to change bitterness that's in us to sweetness. We're not going to be able to change it like a complete tzaddik. And the same thing with the darkness into light. And like what our Rebbe has taught us, the good news is that in a place where it's dark, even a little bit light makes a big change. So even if you have a place there's darkness, or you know someone who's in the dark, bring light in that place. And that place is going to be totally changed. The Tzaddik Gomer has no longer darkness at all. He changed a place of darkness to a place of light. Darkness became light. But I think the lessons that we have over here, it applies to us as well. And I like especially the sample that he gives, bitter to sweet. Bitter and sweet are two opposites. You have a person that's bitter, turn him sweet. It's never going to happen. The tzaddik, by the tzaddik, it's going to happen. So, and this goes back to what we learned before. I believe the point of sweet is the emphasis that we had before, that the complete tzaddik is somebody who is full of love. It's not that he's against evil. He's preaching against evil. He does despise evil, and that's the test, perhaps. But it's because of his passionate, complete love for Hashem. So that is the bitter to sweet. He turned himself around to be totally sweet. He's full of love, full of positive energy. It's sweet. There is no bitterness. That part of him that was bitter is also sweet. So, as we said before, even though we're not on the level of a tzaddik, but I think it has an important message to us. Sweeten up. Have a good night and a sweet life.